Love with a vengeance. So one of the values that we have at LPK is keeping it real, and so I would like to start out this presentation by keeping it real. And so today there are a few things that I'm going to be sharing with you. One is I'm going to tell you how the world works, and you're not going to like that. And then I'm going to raise the stakes a bit, and you're going to hate that. And then you're going to realize that I'm really not well qualified to make this presentation. And then I'm going to propose a solution that I'm hoping you'll find useful. And then I'm going to take the kernel of the idea in this talk, and I'm going to try to get a book deal. So are we all cool with that? Okay, we're all square. All right, so this is a business conference, a business and leadership conference, and this conference has about it something that is in common with most business conferences, and that is the subject of purpose. So I'd like to introduce you to a game that I play. So we work with lots of brands, lots of companies, and they all have purpose statements. And I call this game, What's Your Purpose? And so before this last presidential election, I listened to NPR on my way into work. And I would typically listen for the latest business scandal, and there'd be like one every week. And then I would get to work, and I would just Google what that company's purpose statement was, and then compare it to the scandal that they were embroiled in. It's a sick and twisted game, but it was so fun. So I'd like to share with you some of my favorites. Make that a board game. Yeah. So Merck's next level scandal. So that's the bottom half of their ex-CEO's head. And so Merck had a product that helped with bipolar disorder, and it had one drawback, and that it killed people. And so they eventually had to take it off the market, but what they found was that it also had a benefit for people that were suffering from chronic pain. And there's so many people that are suffering from chronic pain that they figured out a way to get it back on the market with a new name. So it was called Vioxx. I don't know if you remember that name. It still had the same side effect. And as a matter of fact, it killed nearly 500,000 people. Half a million people. And so many people, in fact, that when they took it off the market, the CDC in Atlanta realized a statistical drop in the number and the death rate in the US. So they've got a purpose statement, and that is that they strive to enhance the quality of life for people and their families around the world. Next is Barclays. So this is the Barclays CEO just saying it's not that big of a deal that they rigged the global interest rate benchmark that trillions of dollars of financial products are valued at. So they rigged it to benefit a few of their high roller clients, and unfortunately they got busted. But they aim to be the most admired financial services organization in the world, and for those few people, I'm sure they were. And then Wells Fargo is more recent. So they instituted a company-wide process of bilking their clients out of millions and millions of dollars by selling them products that they didn't know that they were buying. And so they wanted to satisfy their customers' financial needs and help them succeed financially. And then this last one is probably my most recent one. I've stopped doing this. But Mylan is the company that sells the EpiPen. So they bought the EpiPen a few years ago and instantly jacked up the price, times 10. So it went for about $50, and now it's between $500 and $600 for a 2-pack of EpiPens. And so essentially forcing families to make a choice between rent and the health and life of their children. She got hauled in front of Congress and made some sort of specious reason for the upgrade and price. They have a purpose statement that's beautiful. It's to make healthcare solutions available to everyone who needs them, as long as you can pay, right? So why am I introducing you to this sick and twisted game? These people, if you met them on the street, they would probably be lovely people. So what is forcing them? What is compelling them to just violate these corporate statements, some of which they probably had a hand in writing, so obviously and so badly? I share this game with you to introduce you to 4 desires that we believe animate business today. The desire for status, the desire for wealth, vengeance, and power. So status is the desire to be better than everybody else, to be top dog, to look down on everybody else. Wealth is fairly obvious. It's to accrue, to accumulate. Vengeance is about winning. This is about getting back. This is about blowing away your competition. And then finally, power. That's about influence. That is about running the game. This is about being the category captain. We call these 4 desires the 4 horsemen of business. And these 4 horsemen are part of a larger framework of human motivation that we use at LPK to try to understand why people decide the things that they do, what's the decision-making process in the context of brands and in the context of businesses. We use this to kind of help position the brands that we work with. And we did not develop this system. We actually have borrowed it with a little bit of permission from a professor at Ohio State, Dr. Stephen Reese. So he spent his entire career, 40 years, developing this system. It is a global system, it is universal, and it is hardwired. Universal meaning that no matter where you are in the world, human beings are driven by these same 16 desires. The 2 things that you should know is that these desires are contextual, right? So depending on the context that you're in, different desires will percolate up and they will start to generate changes in behavior. So it's no surprise that when you're walking past a bakery and you smell that amazing smell, you instantly get hungry, right? It's the same with all of the desires. The other thing that you should know is that we all kind of have a few desires that we kind of lean on, that we're kind of born with, right? Born or nurtured with. So some of us might be really competitive. And it's just kind of what we would call our factory setting, right? Everybody's got kind of a factory setting. And it's what makes you all distinct. It's kind of what we all experience in each other, and it's what your mother would say makes you special, right? So if you don't mind, I'm going to share with you the remaining 12 very quickly so you get a sense of the entire methodology. And then I'm going to land on the final one that I think you'll find interesting. So curiosity is the desire for knowledge. It's that feeling of awe and wonder when you discover something new. Sustenance, pretty obvious, the desire to eat, but also just the desire for fragrance and flavor. Family is about rearing and nurturing not only your children, but your animals, plants. Honor is to conform and comply with a code. Social contact is about the joy of being with people, right? It's the joy of play. It's no surprise that solitary confinement is probably one of the worst things that you can do to someone. Independence is about being your own person. You know, don't fence me in. I want to blend out, not blend in. Order really stems from cleanliness. You want things in their place. You want cleanliness, you want ritual. Physicality is that desire you feel after a long flight on an airplane, like you just want to get up and move, right? Acceptance is about belonging, finding your tribe, being accepted into a social group. I hope I don't have to explain that. Tranquility is about safety. It's about the need to kind of get anxiety, cortisol out of our lives. And then finally, idealism. And gee, I wonder, what factory setting do most of the people in this room hold, right? What is the factory setting of people that attend the Love Summit? I would say that this place is bathing in idealism right now, right? So that's great. Idealism is about the desire to improve society. It's about fairness. It's about justice. You could say it's about altruism. It's holding true to an ideal. Now here's the challenge. When it comes to business, idealism isn't always invited, right? The four horsemen don't really have much use for idealism and actually do their best to kick idealism out of the party. And so you could say, well, you know, that's not totally true. There's all kinds of businesses that have idealism at their core. Like, what about Patagonia? And Patagonia is great, right? We all love Patagonia. Yvonne Chouinard, awesome. The thing is, we all have the same case studies, right? And that should tell you something. If we've got 5 or 6 case studies, and that's about where we run out, that is telling you that there's not much of this happening in the world, right? So the question is, why? If you're a curious person and you accept this notion that idealism is not invited to the party, why is that? So I have a hypothesis, and it's religion. But it's not the religion that you think I'm talking about. It's not Christianity, it's not Islam, it's not Judaism, it's not Hinduism, it's capitalism. And if you don't think capitalism is a religion, I think Webster's would differ with you. One of their definitions of religion is a cause or system of beliefs that we hold with ardor and faith. Ardor and faith. Is there nothing more, like if you're honest with ourselves, if we're honest with ourselves, there's nothing more that we have had faith in and follow with as much ardor as capitalism and business. You're at a business conference right now, right? How many people read business books? They're horrible, except for the ones that were written by people in this country. Just like we have a saying here, Valerie and I have a saying here that most business books deserve to be pamphlets, but no one gets a pamphlet deal, right? So I wake up every morning, I'm checking my feed. It is like Bible study, right? So, what's going on here? It's actually interesting to go back and look at Karl Marx. Not that I'm a communist, I'm a capitalist. It's my religion. But Karl Marx and his critique of capitalism essentially said that its goal is to accumulate wealth. Its goal is to commodify. And so commodify anything and everything. So commodify objects, commodify services, commodify the land, commodify everything. And if you run out of things to commodify, commodify people. And so we have commodified people. I'm standing, like if you paid to come to this, I hope you paid to come to this conference. You came in part to listen to me talk. So I'm a product in this context, right? And I think we've all been in a conference where you're like talking to someone and then suddenly you're aware that you get that 1,000-yard stare where they're kind of looking over your shoulder and you realize that you have ceased being interesting to this person, right? And they are looking for their next mark, their next object, their next commodity. So obviously profit. There's a profit motive to capitalism, and so to get profit, you need growth. You need to create a surplus, and you need to turn over that capital as fast as possible. So speed has entered our lives in such a superheated way. You can feel it every day. It gets faster and faster. Productivity is the way you get more speed, and how do you know if you're productive? You measure everything. If I have to hear the word metrics in my life again, I'm going to, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull the wings off a fly or something. I don't know what I'm going to do. So measurements. Marx also, because this is a critique of capitalism, identified some of the negative outcomes of capitalism. So things like disempowering of workers, income inequality, sound familiar? Alienation. And it's interesting to kind of note that in 1850, when Karl Marx was writing Das Kapital, capitalism wasn't really a thing. It was only a thing in the small island nation of England, a little bit of Western Europe, and a little bit of the Eastern United States. It's kind of weird to think that there was a world before capitalism. Today, of course, we are just covered in it. The world is covered in capitalism. It is the operating system of the world in which we live, and it's no surprise that our education system is set up to deliver our children into this world. So education is about metrics. It's about measuring. It's about grading. It's about competition. The competition to get into preschool in some communities is as tough as it is to get into universities. So we have essentially dunked our children into these a situation that elevates these four desires. These desires have become the operating system for our society. So, in that context, what do you think it's going to happen when you have an idea, an ideal? You've got an idea that will create social responsibility, fairness, will kind of help with greenhouse gases. Something idealistic. When you present this idea to a business person, even someone as nice as this guy, he looks nice, we're going to call him Brad. He looks like a Brad. And Brad, he also looks like first wave millennial, you know, the ones that still want to change the world. And so he's cool, right? He's got a zit on his chin, but other than that, he's pretty cool, right? And you could come in and just hit him with the most compelling pitch. Your ideal is just lighting up inside his heart. You've got him so excited, and he's like, cool, let's meet next week. I've got to meet with my boss. We will meet next week and put this plan into movement, into motion. You walk out on top of the world, you've scored, and back in Brad's office, he's like, why do I smell horse shit? And then they're like, that's my horse noise. And so then Vengeance says, what was that all about, Brad? And Brad then needs to reschedule. So at this point, I anticipated you thinking that I was the most cynical bastard that you'd ever met. And actually, you might be right about that. Concerning what I witnessed yesterday, I feel comparatively cynical compared to this group. I also kind of feel like you might be feeling like Harrison Ford in The Fugitive. Remember this?
I didn't kill my wife. I don't care.
I don't care either. I'm Tommy Lee Jones. Right? Desires are not moral, and they're not immoral. They are amoral. They are the way that we are wired. They are hardwired. They are ancient. This is the way the world works. And I also want to tell you that there's someone else who doesn't care, and that's why it's not a someone, it is a something, and that is your government. I'm here to tell you that your government does not care about you. Get used to this fact. So I've got metrics. So I'd like to introduce you to two professors. One is Marty Gillens, and the other guy is Ben Page. So one is a professor of political science, the other is a professor of psychology and human sciences. One's at Princeton, one's at Northwestern, so two very prestigious organizations. They are not pundits, they are not journalists, they have no axe to grind, they are scientists, right? This is science. You can tell they're scientists because they've got yellow teeth from drinking too much tea. I can say that because I've got crappy teeth too. So they did a study where they compared national legislation from the mid-60s to the mid-2000s, so essentially 40 years of national legislation. And they compared the policy outcomes with the policy preferences of three groups of people: average citizens, like you and I, economic elites, and special interest groups. And I think you know where this is going. But I don't think you understand how far this is going. So the results of their study was that 76% of the time economic elites got their way. A little over 50% interest groups got their way. We got our way 3% of the time. Let that wash over you, just bathe in that, right? So you could say, well, we live in this world where I deserve to have my own set of facts, and I'm going to challenge these numbers, and fine. I didn't do it, these guys did it, right? And like maybe they're 50% off. 50% off of that number is still pretty lousy, right? So I just think it's really interesting that we still have this narrative in our head: good guy, bad guy. This is theater, right? This is bullshit theater. So there's a guy named Mark Leibovich. He is a writer for the New York Times. He's been writing on, he's been like Washington correspondent for 10 or 20, he's been doing this for 20 years, but he was at the Washington Post and now he's at the New York Times. He wrote a book called This Town. I don't know if you've ever read this. It's about Washington and politics and how the world works in Washington. It's an amazing book. It's very enlightening. You don't have to read it because I don't know why he did this, but he encapsulated the entire book in one sentence, and that is, people come to Washington to do good, only to do well. These people are cheap, like an amazing bargain. You can buy a small population state senator for like 30 or 40 grand. New York, 1 or 2 million, so that's more, but that's still a drop in the bucket. Think about the budgets of a multinational corporation. This is easy to buy. And the ROI from a politician is amazing. So in this context, this starts to seem pretty reasonable, don't you think? It kind of starts to make sense. This is reasonable to me. And you know what else?
I don't care.
I don't care. I've spent the first part of this presentation to try to make 2 points to you. And one is that we practice a religion that demands our near dominance of these 4 desires: power, wealth, status, vengeance, the 4 horsemen of business. And then second, that this religion essentially runs the world. Even the people who we rely on for governance, the powers that be that we rely on for their goodwill and good judgment. So with these 2 points in mind, it really occurs to me that we really have only one option, and that is to change the religion. So if you want to change the world, and I know that you all do, you wouldn't be here if you didn't. We need to change the religion. So, once again, it sounds like I'm the second person who has offered this. It's time to hack capitalism. And this is not like life hacker type hacking. This is not some Silicon Valley young man trying to hack the pizza buying process. This is like real hacking, right? This is like delivering a virus into the system. This is a virus of ideals. So how do you start? Well, I always start with Russell Brand. So Russell Brand is an inspiration for me. He's an inspiration in the context of viruses. He has talked more than once about the desire to go to a soup kitchen. And he goes to a soup kitchen for less than idealistic reasons. So he's an ego-driven guy. And he goes to soup kitchens because he wants to be seen going to soup kitchens. He wants the social cred and prestige of going to soup kitchens. And I know that none of you have ever done anything altruistic and kind of looked over your shoulder to see if anybody was watching you. But that's what Russell Brand does. The strange thing that happened to Russell Brand is he went from a self-centered egoist to like being kind of adjacent to this idea of idealism, and it started to infect him in ways that he didn't anticipate. And so he's doing more idealistic things these days. This guy's a similar story. Blake McCoskey. He is a serial entrepreneur, and I think it's kind of interesting. Serial killer, serial entrepreneur. That's another talk. He is an economic elite. This guy gets his way every day, and why wouldn't he? He's got a winning smile. He does not drink tea. Look at those white teeth, right? And when I say serial entrepreneur, I'm like, this guy did a laundry delivery service. He like did billboards. He had one failure trying to start a cable TV station. Did online driver's ed, and it wasn't until he's like playing polo in Argentina that he got asked to help deliver some used shoes to some underprivileged Argentinian school kids that he started to get infected with this idealism thing and ended up making Tom's shoes. And so the interesting thing here is that he did not abandon wealth, status, power, and vengeance. This guy just feeds on the four horsemen. He's got the four horsemen coursing through his body. But it wasn't until he just like unexpectedly got exposed to this virulent strain of idealism that he put it into his business. He generated a business model. He uses the four horsemen to win in business, but he has at its core this ideal, and that ideal has grown over time. He cannot be stopped. So this should give you faith. It gives me faith. It gives me hope. Because this is a different thing than some of the other heroes that we have. So Judy is amazing. Judy is a badass, right? Judy doesn't need you. Judy doesn't need us. She eats the four horsemen for breakfast, right? And I'm sure they're grass-fed. Right? This is Yvon Chouinard. We do not need Yvon Chouinard. He is a once-in-a-generation entrepreneur. He's a once-in-a-generation CEO. This guy is somehow immune to the four horsemen. He may as well be Gandhi, right? These people don't exist that often in our lives. So what we need to focus on is Brad. Brad and his pimple. Brad, who is essentially the central nervous system of capitalism, right? But Brad's not strong. Brad is as frail as we all are, right? Brad needs help. So I know you think I'm lost. I'm a lost soul. I'm the most cynical person you know, but I do have one. I actually do have ardor and faith in something. I have ardor and faith in the human condition. And I have ardor and faith in the human condition because I know that there's potential there. There's potential for good, obviously. There's potential for bad, but there is potential for idealism in the human condition. And I also want to tell you that this next slide nearly killed me when I designed it, and it might still kill me today. And I want to just tell the LPKers in this room that what I'm about to say better not make it across the street or else I'll be pissed. I believe in love. got such a headache, you have no idea. I believe love is within all of us. And I say that not because of some super soft, sticky sweet notion, no platitude here. I believe that love is within all of us because it springs from an ideal that is tied into our very DNA. It is ancient, it is enduring. But two things I want to leave you with. One is you cannot lead with love in a capitalistic setting. In a superheated capitalistic setting, you need to lead with wealth. You need to lead with status. You need to lead with power. You need love with a vengeance. You see what I did there? You need love with a vengeance. The other thing that you need to know is that with any virus, you're going to get resistance. This capitalism is not going to change without a fight. You're going to lose. But you need to keep trying, because the thing that you need to know is that viruses sometimes win. Viruses sometimes take. Viruses are not always bad things. We've had viruses in our evolution throughout our evolution. Viruses can change you forever. And so that now that you have a little bit of understanding of the human condition, I just want you all to sally forth and deliver your cocktail. Deliver your virus into the world. And I just wish you all the luck. And I'm going to go try to get my book deal now. Okay? Cool. Thanks.